Good morning, how are we doing today? This is James Sweeney, aka SplitSuit. Welcome back to another video, and today we're going to review a hand sent in by Firo. And this is a hand from 5 No Limit Online, and without further ado, let's check it out and see what we're dealing with. So there's a min raise under the gun by Maria, there's a 3-bet by Hugo, fold, 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 and Hero decides to flat. So let's start here. In the write-up, Firo says this, says Maria is a 63-27 over 180 hands, good usable sample, obviously on the fishy side of the spectrum, especially at full ring. Hugo is an 18-13 with a 7.1% 3-bet over 627 hands. Again, good sample size. So, in this situation, Firo makes the assumption that Hugo is probably 3-betting pretty darn strong queens plus ace king, and Hero decides to flat because Maria is not really doing a tremendous amount of 4-betting, so chances are Maria flats, we go 3-way to it, we have position a large chunk of the time, good to go. So, a couple things to say from here. First and foremost, I think the range assumption on Hugo is a little bit on the tight side of the spectrum, partially because Hugo has a 7% 3-bet, but of course you should compare that against resteal stats to see if resteals are massively dominating that 3-bet percentage, but also Hugo has position on someone he deems as fishy, and almost certainly Hugo is at least paying some sort of attention, and because of that, I think that the range is definitely going to be at least a little bit wider than just queens plus ace king. Maybe it's 10s plus ace queen plus, something in that spectrum, but I think you're probably going to be looking at something at least a pinch wider than just queens plus ace king, again, because he has position on such a weak player. So flatting here, definitely going to be doing that 100%. There's really no reason to 4-bet in this situation because you're probably not generating a ton of folds from Hugo, and by flatting, again, you keep position on the fishy opponent, most likely invite the fish to come along, good to go, rock and roll. So we end up getting Maria to call as well, again not shocking, go 3-way to it, check check, and Hero decides to check behind. So let's talk about this for a moment. So in the write-up, Firo says this, on the flop, I don't think he, meaning Hugo, could be holding many flushes in his hand as the ace of spades blocks ace king of spades and ace queen of spades. So I check as I think I'm not winning anything by betting here as no one will fold a 1-card flush draw. So there's two major things to unpack from that little write-up. First and foremost, yes, 100% spot on with the ace of spades on board. Hugo cannot have ace king of spades, ace queen of spades, ace jack of spades, any of that kind of stuff. So the kind of made flush possibilities that Hugo can have are really boiled down to like king queen of spades, maybe king jack of spades, but you're probably really not looking at very many spade combos. Totally agree, at least from Hugo. Now, in this situation, I disagree with the latter part though, because in this situation, if you bet and get looked up by a 1-card flush draw, a naked spade, then you're making money in that situation. And since Maria is most likely going to be the one doing that, or maybe Hugo with like jacks with a spade or queens with a single spade, that sort of thing, I think there's value to be had here. So I think checking is just giving free cards for no reason. You're allowing single spade hands to draw for free, and you're not capitalizing and punishing and making value along the way. So because of that, I'd really like to see a bet here, something for like 65, 75 cents, something in that ballpark should be totally fine. And really at this point, I'm focused more on Maria than I am Hugo. I think there's definitely some value to be had from Hugo, but I'm really focused on Maria at this point. But unfortunately, the flop does go check, check, check. On the turn, action gets a little bit weird. There's a min bet by Maria, and then almost a potter by Hugo. And now we have to make some decisions. So if I ever find myself in this exact situation, here are the things that I'm going to be thinking about. First and foremost, is Hugo likely to be bluffing? Well, yes, Maria's bet does not signify strength by any stretch of the imagination. Maria is fishy. So I don't think Hugo is going to be bluffing here a large chunk of the time. So because of that, I don't think you're going to see Hugo randomly showing up with like king jack offsuit or anything like that, partially because the preflop range, and then partially just because I don't think he would turn that into a bluff here if he did make it here that way. So I don't think you're looking at bluffs from Hugo's range, and as such my major question is like, okay, what the heck would he do this with? So I would ask myself also, would Hugo slow play the flop with anything, right? Would Hugo check the flop with aces, with tens, with made flushes, any of that sort of stuff? And I think there's a possibility that he would, assuming that you would be the kind of person who would fire the flop a lot, Maria would call wide, and then he could go for a big fat check raise. So I think there is some possibility of slow played hands in this range. And yes, again, there's not a tremendous amount of made flushes, but there are some combos of things like aces, more tens, that sort of stuff. Again, assuming you thought all of that was in the preflop range and then going from there. And I personally did. I know Firo made the assumption of queens plus ace king. And again, I disagreed with that. I think that's a little bit too tight. But in this situation, I don't think Hugo's messing around. And obviously, Ace King doesn't really perform well against a range that's mostly on the value side of the spectrum, right? Because is Hugo really going to like raise here with semi bluffs like queens with a spade, jacks with a spade, anything like that? I don't think so. So I think if he had that kind of hand, he would just play it for cheap, right? Rather than go for a big raise, because what does that really do? He's not going to get ace X to fold. He's not really going to do any of that like good stuff for it. So because of that, I think when Hugo raises, it's the slow played stuff, it's monstery stuff, and even when it's like ace king, I think it's ace king with the spade. So, us trying to give action in that scenario, obviously he just has the free roll on us. So I don't think this is a great spot. I think Hugo's raising range is very, very strong here, and I don't think there's a lot of reason to give action. Now again, this is just kind of a weirdly played hand because of the flop check. If the flop got bet, we can play this much more straightforward. Because it got checked, now all of a sudden we're kind of in a weird guessing game trying to figure it out. But my assumption is that Hugo is going to be very, very strong here. And I just don't think that we're doing well enough to consider giving action. So in this spot, Firo does decide to just pile it in, fold, gets called by Hugo, and of course Hugo ends up showing up with a monster. It is what it is. But the major thing is like, okay, was the preflop range correct? And again, Firo assigned queens plus ace king, which obviously king jack suited being in there really lets us know in the future that we shouldn't assign such a tight 3-betting range for this individual. And then post flop again, especially on the turn, I just don't think Hugo's bluffing enough. So I think kind of like the worst hand he's going to be raising there is going to be like ace king with the king of trump, and again that just takes a free roll on us. So I don't particularly love the way the Firo played this hand. Again, the flop check was a little bit wonky. The turn jam I don't think really does a tremendous amount other than making sure that you lose the most when you're behind, and I don't think it really nets you anything extra any other time. So hopefully that kind of helps in the future when you find yourself in this kind of situation. Again, I really liked pre-flop, but post-flop is where this hand I think started to crumble quite quickly. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you, Firo, so much for asking this question. And by the way, if you have your own hand or question that you'd like me to look at, you can ask me at any time. Just go to splitsuit.com/ask. Again, splitsuit.com/ask. Fire it in there and I'll see what I can do about getting it added to a new YouTube video shortly. Again, thank you so much for hanging out today. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying these types of videos. And of course, I'll see you back soon with a brand new video. And in the meantime, good luck out there and happy grinding.